Father Groppi was born in Milwaukee, actually lived his whole life here. His family owned a grocery store in Bayview. He was born in the back of that grocery store, grew up there, went to Bayview High School. While he was in the seminary, he worked at a day camp in the Hillside Project area. The day camp was mostly athletic, recreation programs. And that's where he developed his rapport with the Black community. And he saw things in very personal terms. Some people might, the people who don't want a Black person living next to them, look at a Black person and all they see is Black. He looked at the children and the teenagers and their families that he was working with and saw a good third base person.
Oh, he was a loving man. He was a truthful man. He was an honest man. He helped who he could, you know. I can remember one incident where my mom was a stay-home mom and everything. She got really sick once, you know, and my father had to take off work a lot, and we were still in school at the time. And Father Groppi knew this. He came to the house and he made my dad take money that he had missed on the job. And I was standing there, and I'm as a child, I usually get in, you know, parents' business and that. But my father actually let him, you know, give him money for rent that day.
As I remember back on Father Groppi, he was a gentle person, but at the same time, I see him now as being very vocal, very outspoken, very militant. Kind of interesting for a priest, but that's the way he was. And it seemed like everybody would, we were sort of his flock. You know, he was a white priest who, I guess we felt, had these ideals and ideas and convictions that a lot of the other white people at the time should have held.
Father James E. Groppi loved that man to death, but he wasn't Black. But you couldn't tell, and he couldn't tell. He was a part of our struggle because he chose to identify with our struggle. He said, when a parishioner comes to me and he has a problem, he says, that's not the parishioner's problem alone. That is now a problem for me, and I must act. So you have people who are outside of their comfort zone because they see what is happening to someone else, and even though it's not happening necessarily directly to them, they take up the cause and they say, you know what, what's happening to you is happening to me.
In the beginning, I listened to a lot of Black ministers that were condemning him along with the Archdiocese, and it more or less built my faith up in him, that he was right. Because no other Black would step forward to take that position. So, yeah, I'd say I was very admirable of him.
It was just the aura about that man. He was just open. He wore his heart on his sleeve. That's how you would just fall in love with him. He was honest, and he did not have that superior attitude, I'm the father, bless you, my child. It was, let's talk.
Why did he continue to fight through all this when he didn't have to?
Well, I think you reach a point at which you do have to. Okay, yeah, you're white. You could go back into the white community. You could say, I was wrong. I mean, he had a pretty recognizable face. He couldn't just blend back into the woodwork. But that point aside, whether he could or he couldn't, he couldn't. He couldn't internally. He couldn't because how would he live with himself? Knowing what he knew, knowing that what was driving the opposition was hate. How could he stand with hate? How could he live with himself if that's what he did? Yeah, you can ignore it for a long time, but once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep.